So you ready to get your mind blown with HR dashboards? So by a show of feet, I know I'm looking at confused faces here. You all know where your feet is. By a show of hands, who here is part of HR? Yeah, more people than we thought. IT? Other? Thank you for the others. You probably couldn't find anything else to go to, huh, and just got stuck with us. No, I'm sorry. Anyways, so thank you for coming to our presentation on how Capital Group implemented HR dashboards, and also thank you to Tableau for having us. So my name is Trish Cox. My colleague in crime here is Tanya Manis. We're both senior HR technology analysts at Capital Group. I'm from the Irvine, California office, and she's from our San Antonio, Texas office. As you can see here, we are very proud of these accomplishments that we've had this week, especially my Human Vulture Award. I mean, those bits and bytes places, oh my gosh, I was there all day. Anyways, so who are we? So for one, we are not Capital One. So if you're here for the Capital One session, they're actually in a different room. So there's nothing in our wallets, all right? So don't ask us this after the presentation. So Capital Group is a private investment management firm whose mission is to deliver superior long-term investment results and services to investors and clients. So we have over $1 trillion in assets under management, and we're also home of the American Funds, the largest mutual fund family in the United States, so you might have heard of them. In terms of our workforce, we have over 7,000 associates worldwide spread across over 20 different offices in Europe, Asia, Australia, North America, and we just opened one actually recently in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Oh, and I just turned off the presentation. There you go. So what will you learn from us during this presentation? So first, I'll take you on a journey on how we were before Tableau and our current journey with Tableau. I'll actually then take you through the ABCs of how we built our HR dashboard. And then Tanya will go over the rest of the presentation with the management and sustainability, our current efforts with dashboard automation, how to engage your HR audience with your dashboard, and the lessons learned we had in an actual demo of our dashboard. So first, before I get into it, you're going to hear throughout this presentation what our team did, which is HR technology, versus what our HRIS, Human Resources Information team did, which is part of IT. So in essence, our group is part of the human resources function. We primarily work closely with our HRIS team, which is part of the information technology group over at Capital. HR technology is what we are called the data owners, the SMEs of all of our human capital data, while HRIS provides lovely homes for all of our data. We're also the process experts in HR technology in all of our systems, while HRIS is our technical expert and helps us manage and implement all of our technologies. And one main thing is we're the main liaisons between our HR business partners, our generalist teams, our specialist teams, while we then work with HRIS to talk through all of the management of our HR technologies. So with that, one thing important to note is we did have a great relationship with HRIS that led to the success of our HR dashboards. So without them, we wouldn't be where we are at today. So let's do our journey before Tableau, or what we call 2012 BT. So how did we deliver reports? Simple enough. Excel, Excel, Excel. I believe all of you are probably in that same boat or were recently in that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will marry Excel if it was legal in California, but unfortunately I can't and went traditional and married a human. Otherwise, Excel is a great tool. However, how we did our reporting is we did provide similar metrics to the groups that we represented. However, we catered to each group and presented them differently on all of the Excel reports we had. Most of our requests were also ad hoc, so there wasn't really any standardization on timing of when we provided any of these HR metrics. And finally, it was just super time consuming. We had to build reports straight from SAP, our connects to applicant tracking system, our time system, do all of the manual meshing of the data together, and then used Excel to basically show all of the reports. So with what we knew with HR technologies and where it was going in the reporting world, we wanted to take our reporting to the next level. Thus, how did we make the jump to Tableau? So here is just kind of high-level milestones of our current journey with Tableau and our HR dashboards. So actually, first, what we did is we started with a proof of concept with a different tool altogether, which was Excelsius. Are you guys familiar with Excelsius? So one of the things we found out in that proof of concept is that IT had to do everything. We made all the they had to make all the changes, deal with all the data, work with all the data sources, and HR, we were just there just to say, we want it to look this way, this way, this way, this way. And it was just not flexible in how it presented any of the data. So what our team did is we stepped back and refined what we really wanted in a dashboard tool. We wanted something more self-service. We wanted something that had as minimal IT involvement as possible. I mean, we knew we weren't going to let go of that partnership completely, but we wanted more flexibility and control with how we visualized our data. So two things happened coincidentally, which we feel was fate with what happened. So we went and talked with just a bunch of our HR colleagues, and actually one of them came up to us and said, hey, I saw this cool dashboarding tool from another group in Capital. And I said, oh, cool, we're looking at one, what is it called? And I remember it because I laughed when I heard, she's like, I think it's something called Tableau. And I'm like, Tableau, I don't know if I want to have a dashboard tool named Tableau. But anyways, we found out it was Tableau, and we added that as a tool to evaluate. Along with that, our HR director at the time came to our team and said, I'm going to these board meetings, and I've been asked for a lot of metrics on the spot. I need something to take with me so I could just give them all the data right away. So with that happening, we checked out Tableau, we downloaded their 2-week trial that they had, and our team built a dashboard in the 2 weeks. Learned everything on the spot and built this dashboard, and that was our kind of key and our sign that we should move forward with Tableau. So after we purchased the license for Tableau, we then created a basic dashboard and actually refined it a bit more for our HR director. And then we developed really quickly to publish it on a monthly and quarterly basis for him. With that, we then had an initial engagement with the rest of our HR teams, our generalists and specialist partners, by doing a roadshow with them. So we presented this dashboard, this brand new dashboard, to all of them, and we gathered as much feedback as possible, knowing that this is brand new to them and they're going to want more. We know they're going to want more, and we know they're going to want edits. So this initial engagement provided huge value to us in our initial dashboard. And then finally, these two, the dashboard automation and ongoing engagement improvements, is what we're currently doing today. So without going into too much detail, Tanya will actually go through that later. But that's basically these last two here is what we're doing right now. So the journey continues. So late 2012, 2014 AT after Tableau. So how did we continue our advancement with Tableau? So what I wanted to show you in this slide here is high level, how did we advance how we got our data, how we extracted our data to get our data sources, the number of metrics we had, and how we visualized it over time. And so you can see here in early 2012 when we just got Tableau, the data was spotty. And so what we meant by that is we had to grab data and build our data source from all of our different HR technologies. So from our applicant tracking system, our SAP, our time data, our learning management module in SAP. We took all that and manually extracted the reports and put it in our data source, which was Excel. Because it was so manual, we only had 5 to 10 metrics at the time, and we used Tableau reader and actually made it printable so that it could be on just hard copy PDFs. So a little later from next year, which was 2013 on to early part of 2014, the data was better. So what we did is we extracted our data from BW to Excel, which I'll get more into detail in a little bit. We increased our number of metrics up to 10 or 15 more, or actually 10 to 15. And then this is when we also, our IT team implemented server as well. So this is when we use both reader and server for our audience. And then now, here with late 2014 ongoing, our data, again, is much better. All of our data is coming out from one reporting tool. We're working on a direct connection from SAP BW to Tableau. We've drastically increased our metrics to 30 and increasing over time. And then we've actually been a little creative and used server along with our HR Sharepoint intranet site to show the dashboard. So now that I've taken you through the journey, I'll now talk through the ABCs of how we built our HR dashboard. So how to set the stage for choosing the right metrics is the first thing that we did. So we had 3 mantras going in when choosing the right metrics: decide, prioritize, and have courage. So first, decide on what metrics that matter. Go with what your audience wants. Again, with the initial engagement that I talked about earlier, that's where we ask them, is there anything else you would want to see? So just list them all out and just get as much feedback as possible with your audience. Yeah, metrics around headcount, attrition, more in internal mobility, a lot of our talent data involving requisitions and time to fill and all that, and then more learning data, and also overtime and time data. So when I talked about how we were doing reports in Excel, all we did was basic headcount data, basic attrition data. So they actually wanted more when, of course, we showed this. So with that, you are going to get a laundry list of items because they're just going to rapid fire at you what they want. And so with that, you have to prioritize what's the most important to an initial HR dashboard. You can't do everything, and most likely the data also isn't quite ready yet to show out to your audience. Therefore, we thought, what's the easiest to attain? Meaning what data we knew had a standardized process, we could easily capture it, it's there, and it's always accurate. And also, what's repeatable? Again, you could have data that you have in any of your systems, but if you have to manually extract it out and it takes you hours to manually slice and dice and put together just to even get to your data source, then that's probably not the best metric point to start off with. So again, prioritize the metrics on what you want to show on your dashboard. And finally, we had to have the courage to say no to our business partners. Also to say now and not later. Again, if it's not easily repeatable, but you're confident you could probably standardize the process and be able to get the data a little better over time, just go ahead and say, yeah, it's not now, but a little bit later. And also, figure out whether it's valuable to all of the HR business partners and specialists. It could be valuable to one group, but not the rest of the 90% of the group. So you're going to have to tell them, no, at this time it's not the most valuable for everybody. And then ask if it's a want or need. Listen to them when they give you their feedback. Example, wouldn't it be nice if we polled all the women in CG on who loves the Backstreet Boys? Versus them saying, the key to finding Trish more friends is who loves the Backstreet Boys. Yes, it's ridiculous. Nobody's ever going to answer that or ask that. But the point I'm trying to make is one's an ask versus one's a want versus a need. So just listen to your partners and figure out exactly, is it something that's a nice to have more than a really need to have. So after you chose and selected the right metrics, the next is setting the stage with technology. So kind of 3 main buckets on how we got the data, how we visualized the data, and then how did we then share that data. So first, we chose a reporting tool to help build our data source, which is our Business Explorer Query Designer and Analyzer tools, which is what I've mentioned as SAP Business Warehouse BW. We then chose a tool to visualize the data, which is, of course, Tableau. And then finally, how did we share that data? What is the audience-facing tool? So we did use Tableau Reader. Apologize for the typo there. Tableau Reader as one option. And then we also, again, used Tableau Server and Sharepoint as well in a combination. We'll show you that later as another way to share the data. So a little bit more in depth of how we lined up all of our data. So we consciously chose Tableau as a visualization tool only. Thus, we chose SAP Business Information Warehouse to store all of our data. This is where we utilized and leveraged our partnership with IT the most by having them extract all of our data from our main HR technologies. So we have Connexa, Brass Ring, that have all of our requisition and applicant data, our SAP HCM, our learning management system, and all of our financial data. And then another big chunk of data is our time data, which came from Ceridian. So what IT did is help us find the home and created all these data cubes, which sit in SAP BW. From there, what our team ended up doing is we created all of the queries and calculations in BW. And what we do is we run those queries and use that as the data source to feed into Tableau. So you're probably wondering why we use SAP BW as opposed to Tableau to run all the calculations, because it does have the capability. And one main thing is, honestly, we had a huge investment with BW already prior to even acquiring Tableau. So we had all the skills, our team was well-versed in it, and we were confident in more building our calculations more streamlined and a lot more sufficient in the BW tool than in Tableau. So that was one key thing. Another thing is we found that it was a lot easier to report off of an org hierarchy using Tableau. So we noticed that we were having a difficult time doing organizational hierarchy reporting or dashboarding with Tableau. Excuse me. So what we consciously did is we used our org hierarchy straight from BW or from SAP into BW that could present that a lot more smoothly, and we created the queries that way. So again, we put all the calculations there because we felt more confident with the data coming from there. So finally, after you got all the metrics, you got all your data sources lined up, it's syncing beautifully with your data source and Tableau, then it was finally going into Tableau and putting all together your visuals. So we had a bunch of goals, and I'll show you what we've done. So our first goal was to aim for simplicity, nothing fancy. I know with Tableau, you could get really excited with all of the different charts, the bubble charts, the tree charts, all of the charts that Tableau has. And we did start with all of those neat little charts with the dashboard, but we had to step back and think of our audience. They're used to bar charts, they're used to line charts, they're still getting used to knowing how to see that data. Therefore, we started, and we still have today, bar charts, line charts, and tables. I know it's a little boring, but it gets to the point. So again, think about your audience and see what they can get, which leads to the next goal is make sure they get it in 10 seconds or less. If they look at it and they just stare at it funny, you know missed the mark. So again, straightforward visuals as much as possible, especially if you're just starting out the dashboards with your HR audience. And then the third thing is consistent color schemes. What we mean by that is how we represent the data is by our different lines of businesses. So with that, we had to make sure to not get rainbow bright color crazy and make sure there was a applicable color for each group. So every time you go to a different set of metrics, IT group that's purple here will be purple in another slide. So simple stuff like that. And then what we loved also about Tableau is the hovering tooltip feature. So this was our way to show how our formula is with each metric. So it definitely reduced a lot of confusion and asks from our HR business partners, how did you calculate that metric? So simple, just add it to your tooltip so that they know right away, this is how we calculated average overtime. And then finally, a unique thing that we've done with our HR dashboard is we grouped our tabs by metric family. And you'll see a little bit more how we did that with the demo. So how we grouped it is we did our headcount and resources information in one tab. We then moved on to talent mobility metrics, one tab for just time, learning, attrition, so on and so forth. So we felt that by putting this metric family together, it allowed more fluidity and ease of the HR business partners reading our data. So that's kind of one way I think we've done, that's a unique thing with our dashboard. So that's basically high level, how you build HR dashboard. Easy, huh? Took me 2 weeks. You guys could do it too. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Tanya, and she's going to take over the management and sustainability.
Thank you. So for the HR dashboard, you can imagine if it takes too long to do it or you have no idea what your process is, it's going to be cumbersome every time you have to repeat your process. So we followed 4 simple steps when we started documenting our process and started going through it on a regular basis. We started with the documentation of our process. We call it our playbook. It actually is a Word document that has a big football play thing on the front page, and it has step-by-step instructions on how we run each query, and also where the queries are used within our dashboard. It has roles for all of our team members, and it has checklists. We thought this was really important when we started doing the dashboard because it gives us the ability to switch off. So if I'm out of the office, Trish is out of the office, anyone on our team can pick up the playbook and run the queries for us. We don't have to be there to make sure the dashboard gets populated.
See, we're both here, and they're screwed. No, I'm just kidding.
The next thing we did was we built queries that were easy to maintain. So a lot of times when you have a system like BW, you end up with a developer that builds all of your queries. We actually went through the effort of learning our queries, learning BW, how to report out of the system, and we learned how to build the queries. When we need to make changes, we have a really quick turnaround time. We don't have to involve a developer. We don't have to involve IT. We can do those changes on our own. And so it leads to less IT involvement. We get things done faster. And the next thing we did was standardize our visuals. You can imagine we have a lot of business groups within HR. Everybody wants to see something differently. So we had to step back and say, this is the way we're going to present the visual. This is the best for the majority of the audience. Because we have a consistent visual now, we're not changing it every time we produce the dashboard. It's easier for us. We don't have to think about, how are we going to visualize it this month? The next thing we did was we only do scheduled refreshes of our dashboard. We do not do ad hoc requests. If we are going to refresh, we refresh the same time, and so our time commitment is limited to a certain period within the month, within the quarter. Finally, this process really is meant to be cyclical. So you're going to do it once when you set everything up, and then expect to go back through it when you add metrics. So if you're going to add a metric, just make sure that you follow all of the same steps as you change. So now let's talk a little bit of dashboard automation. This is kind of a shift. We do have a direct connection from SAP BW to Tableau. So there were a lot of changes that we had to go through when we started thinking about this connection. So if we start with team effort, before direct connection, we have how many? 6 people that work on running queries within the dashboard. So we each have to spend time of our days to make sure the queries get run. The way that we had our queries built before probably wasn't the best way. We were running queries multiple times to get the results for different time periods. Now we really have minimal maintenance. We have a great IT partner who built a custom table for us in the background of BW. I know that's a little techie, but he built a table where we could just enter dates. And basically all we have to do is go into our dashboard in Tableau, and it automatically populates based on the date that it is. So on August 1st, we could log into Tableau, and our dashboard would automatically populate with July numbers, because we always report a month behind. I'm going ahead. The next was we had a very extensive validation process before we went to Direct Connect. With the validation process, the people that were running the queries would validate that the queries looked right when they got it out. Someone was responsible for populating the dashboard and making sure the graphs and the charts looked all right. Then it would go back to the people who ran the queries so they can do a deeper dive. And then it went to our senior manager to do final validation and make sure that everything looked right. There wasn't something funny. It was important for us to get that outside perspective, because when you're an analyst, you're working with the data all the time. It's really hard to step back and see where there could be mistakes. So there were times that we were missing things that should have been caught earlier in validation. After direct connection, it's a faster sign-off. We're not copying and pasting from BW to Excel. There's less chance of error. It's a direct connection. The only thing that needs to be validated, really, is our custom table. So it's just making sure that the dates are right in the custom table and it's populating the right data. The next thing the biggest thing was we went from flat files with no hierarchy to a hierarchy and the direct connection. That makes you think about your visuals also, because the hierarchy changes a lot of things. When you have a flat file, it's really easy to get things to do the things that you want it to do. So we had to really think about the hierarchy and how that was going to change our visuals. Finally, we had a mid-month delivery. We still do, because we're doing both at the same time right now. So mid-month, we would have the first 15 days. So essentially, our HR team had to wait until August 15th to get July data. After we completely roll it out to the full HR community, they'll have immediate access. They still have to wait for the snapshot period in BW. So it'll be 5 business days as opposed to 15 days. So it's much quicker than they would have had it before. So unfortunately, we can't show you the direct connection in our demo. And that's because we can't mask that data. And it is HR data. So just a quick screenshot before you can see this is, it's actually a really flat file. You can't tell which groups report up, if it's all the same level. And then after Tableau, you really get after the direct connection, you get the hierarchy. So you can see CG overall is our overall company, and all the companies below it report up to that group. Then you get the grand total at the bottom. That would be it's the same as the CG overall line. Oh, see, I even have an arrow. So what do you need to think about when you do the direct connection to BW? These were the things that really stood out to me when I was working on the project. First, should you embed your login credentials? So we have, again, this is going to get a little techie. We have 4 cubes that we're getting data from in BW. What that means is that our end users for our monthly dashboard would have to log in 4 times in order to get that data visualized. We didn't want them to log in. It's information that everyone in HR already has access to. So what we ended up doing was creating a standard login where the password will never expire. And now our users can it's seamless. They just get to the dashboard and everything populates. The second thing you need to think about is how will hierarchy functionality impact your visuals? Like I mentioned before, The hierarchy does change the way you have to visualize things. You can't color code by business group anymore because you have to pick a level. You have to think about, does it even make sense to show the hierarchy? Should it just be a filter? So it's just small things like that you have to think about when you're thinking about a direct connection. Finally, what groups are you going to need when you do your visualizations? You lose the ability to do groups dynamically in Tableau when you have a direct connection. So you need to either do those groupings in BW prior to taking it into the Tableau system, or you need to, there's some sort of code that you can type. I'm not that technical, so I can't do the code, but there is a code that you can type into Tableau to get the groups that way.
What's an example?
Groups.
Like, so we have, one of our grouping, we have rec data that comes in, and we have two types of the way the recs can get filled. It can be internal or external, but it relies on our recruiters completing that field. If they don't complete it or they select NA, it ends up in this unknown bucket. So we used to bucket the hashtag and the NA together to get an unknown group. So now, without those groups, it shows 4 options, which really doesn't exist. It's really only 3. Yes?
You mentioned recognition. Is that a text query you're staying on top of, or are you going straight at the cube? Yeah.
It actually goes straight to the cube.
Can you repeat the question?
The BEX is, the question was, is it a BEX query or you go straight to the cube? So actually, I'm lying. It's the query. So you have a query. You're only getting access to the free characteristics, and but it does download everything that's in that cube.
And then my second question is, how do you maintain security? So you go through Sharepoint to get the Tableau dashboard, is that how you do it, or can anybody go get this?
So the next question is, how do you maintain security? So yes, it is through SharePoint. Only HR users have access to our SharePoint site. The other piece is if we have a compensation query, which has an additional layer of security, those queries we would make people log in to get the results.
And another thing to add, there's also security. We built AD groups with our server. So we publish the dashboard to the server, which then publishes to SharePoint. So it's like a trifecta of security.
At the Tableau server you're implementing?
Yes. So there's AD groups just dedicated to our HR folks that's implemented into server.
Your BW security doesn't get inherited, right? At like dashboard. So when you publish to Tableau server, you can't have your SAP security.
You can,
Well,
if you don't embed credentials. If you embed the credentials, and so if you don't embed the credentials, they have to log into BW, so it does take your SAP security. If you do embed credentials, you lose that SAP security. Any other questions? Okay. So how did we engage our audience? What use is it to have an HR dashboard if nobody's ever going to use it or even look at it? So as Trish mentioned before, we had an initial rollout. When we first rolled it out, we started with our senior leader, our HR leader, and he used it on his own. We didn't publish it anywhere. It was just for him. We decided through conversations with him, it really is valuable for the full HR audience. But nobody had ever used Tableau before. So there was some sort of training that was needed. So we created a video. It was a really detailed video. Showed everyone how to use filters, where they could find the dashboard, pretty much everything they would need to know about Tableau and about how they can get to that information. Then we did roadshows. And this is where we went out to the individual business group meetings, and we talked to them about what the dashboard was. We did a more in-depth demo of what they could get from the dashboard. We were very specific in how their groups looked with the data. And we started the feedback gathering process. That's when we started getting ideas from them. Are these metrics helpful? Do they make sense? Is it applicable to your business group? So that was initially. As we continue to roll out the dashboard and we continue to publish it, we want to make sure it's still getting used. We have the metrics that are available via server, but we also want to talk to people to make sure that everything is still helpful for them. So we do, every time we refresh the dashboard, we have 2 different refresh cycles. We have a monthly and a quarterly. We send an email blast. And in the email blast, like one line says the new data is available. Then we go through the process of finding a tip for people, whether it's a tip with another HR technology or a tip with Tableau. That way it's not just an email blast that says, hey, go look at your data. It's, hey, go look at your data. And by the way, did you know that you can sort using this function in Tableau? And then we have the last two kind of go together, the tailored content and SharePoint. So tailored content is what Trish was talking about. Within Tableau Server, we have 3 different groups that we publish to. We have the broad HR audience that gets all of the metrics, or not all of the metrics, the most limited view of the metrics. We have the HR senior managers that get a broader view. And then we have the HR leadership team that gets the full view of all the metrics. So that's another way that we've kind of tailored what people need to see in our dashboard.
So along with that, so the difference is why we did 3 different ways is, so I'll work from our HR leadership team. They're able to see performance metrics, more sensitive metrics like performance and demographics, where then we got a little bit narrower and narrower. When we got to the broader HR audience, they can't see performance metrics and all that. And that was just a philosophical decision made at the HR leadership team on what teams can see what data.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, we use SharePoint to deliver our system, our dashboard. We thought it would be easier. We didn't want people to have to go to a third website if they didn't have to. So we embedded the dashboard within SharePoint.
Oh, question.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering, Sana, when you embed in SharePoint, do you find that they have to log in like up to 3 times in SharePoint? Because I'm doing the same thing, and what's happening is when I did something that is making them log in up to 3 times, so, you know.
No, so the question was, when we embedded our dashboard onto SharePoint, the users have to log in? And actually, no. So our SharePoint intranet site already has the SharePoint security groups with the HR people, so that's one. And then we use the page, you'll see it, we use the page viewer that basically all it is, it's calling the Tableau server page, and that one already has the 80 groups we mentioned earlier. And because they don't have to log into that, it's all seamless. They just have to click on the page and the dashboard shows up with their name that shows that that's X person viewing the dashboard within the secured SharePoint site already.
So lessons learned. As Trish mentioned, this was the first time we've done this. We were using Excel. We weren't using Tableau. So we actually learned a lot as we went through this. The first was we wanted to report by org structure, but there were a lot of discussions. Should we use the current org structure? How are we going to compare it to the past? Org structures are constantly changing within HR. So what we ended up deciding is that we would use our current org structure, and we would use that structure to report historically as well. So we wouldn't have to worry about the reorgs and what groups were in this group before. It really is, these are your groups as they stand now. If you had had these groups 6 years ago, this is what it would have looked like within your current org structure. The next thing was thinking about our time periods. So a lot of HR groups like to talk about metrics based on calendar year, especially if you talk to talent acquisition or recruiting. They want to know about calendar year. But when we initially rolled this out, it really was for our HR senior business leader to take it to our managing group and share the metrics with them. And their use is really to look at it by fiscal year. They want the financial data. So we made the decision that we would have our data match fiscal periods as well. That way we could be as closely aligned with finance as possible. Then we started out with just a quarterly dashboard. We decided, let's do it every 3 months. It seems like a lot of work. We'll do it every 3 months and see how it works. What we found is not everything lends itself to being refreshed quarterly. Can you imagine getting an open rec count and it was from 3 months ago? It's probably not as helpful for you as if it's last month or even the closed recs for last month. So things like requisitions, headcount, attrition, those we moved over to a monthly dashboard, and we do refresh those on a monthly basis. So data quality. Data quality was really big for us. We really had to build in those checks and balances. When we first started doing this, like Trish said, we were doing a lot of manual reporting from different different systems. So we had to go through the process of how are we going to validate this. It was a lot about our data governance. So how do we get to consistent metrics? How do we get to consistent definitions? How are we making sure that the data is accurate? And so that's why we build in those validation processes. And we've gone through the process of actually running manual reports and comparing them to our BW reports to make sure they match. The next piece was have a centralized location to access all the necessary data. This is kind of twofold. So if you think about our BW system, that's where all of our metrics are coming from. We don't have to worry about different systems anymore. It really is just the one system. The other thing is we don't want our users to have to go to a lot of different sites, so that's why we opted to do Sharepoint as well. And finally, the key to everything is adoption. Again, if you're building a dashboard and nobody's using it, there's no point to build the dashboard. So we've constantly tried to go back and engage our audience, make sure that it's still useful, ask them if they need new metrics. Is attrition no longer as important as it was before? Is there something new that you need to see? So we want to make sure that adoption level remains relatively high. So key takeaways. These are what we think are keys to success. So first of all, have a governance process. Make sure that you have the appropriate sign-off from the appropriate people and that you've gone through a validation process. Without that step, you're going to lose adoption. If your data is wrong, if something's wrong with the dashboard in general and you're having to go back and always fix it, people aren't going to trust your data. So make sure you have the governance process to take that out of the equation. The next is have a playbook. Document your processes. Make sure that if you're the only one analyst out there, you have everything documented, because if you decide not to go back to work tomorrow, they don't have a dashboard anymore. That might be a good thing, but you really need to have a process so someone else can pick up for you if you're gone. Feedback is going to be key. Anytime that you're creating something for another audience, you want to make sure that you're getting their feedback, because if it's not useful for them, why are you doing it? Make sure that you're getting feedback for changes, and if it's going well, make sure you're getting that feedback too. Feedback doesn't always have to be about a change. It could be that your dashboard is really helping them. Reevaluate the value of your metrics. Again, metrics come and go. You can report on a lot of things in HR. Just make sure that your metrics are still valuable to your audience. And then have fun and experiment. We haven't really had a lot of experimentation yet, but we're trying to get our audience more comfortable with the data, and then we can start experimenting with different charts and graphs and things like that. But make sure you at least try to throw out the crazy stuff at the beginning, and you never know, they might accept it. All right, so this is probably why you all came. So we'll do a little bit of a demo. I will tell you that data is masked, so it's not true HR data, but it does have some data in it. Also, I will tell you that our dashboard is probably not following best practice from Tableau, because we have an HR audience, and we have people that still want to be able to print things. So we try to make it in as few pages as possible with as many charts as possible. So we'll start here, and if we just go down, this is our Sharepoint page, so you can see that we have our dashboard embedded directly within our Sharepoint. Yeah, sorry.
Just a quick question. What version of Sharepoint are you using?
10.
We're going to go on 13 next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is our Sharepoint page, and this is kind of where we have it embedded. You can see all the tabs running across the top. And this one's a little hard to see, so I'm actually going to switch over to tab prod.
So actually go back to the, so basically what you have here is not only do you have the dashboard, what we are able to do here is explain what the dashboards are, and then also to the right, is it here? We have the different links to view the dashboards, the 3 different dashboards that we have based on audience and security, how to get to those dashboards as well. So again, we wanted to make this the one place to go consume the dashboards so that they don't have to go to as many places that you could possibly go to. So for ease of seeing our dashboard, we're just going to go to server.
Yeah. So this is our filtering page. What we decided, we have a lot of different queries that we're running, so nothing was really giving us a good global filter. So we built parameters in order to filter our business groups. So if you've dropped down, you can actually go through and you can select which business group you want to see. And it'll update all of the charts in the background, so it updates everything within the page. We did the same for location as well. And so you can see all of our sites there. We're big on acronyms, so you probably won't understand a lot of the acronyms here, but like LXO is Luxembourg, and Irvine is Irv.
So on and so forth.
Yeah. So if we go into the summary tab, this is kind of our one-pager. This is what we said, this is what you can print, you can take it with you can share it with your business groups. And it's running really slow. So it's essentially all of our metrics with one tab. They have a quick view of, goes back to the keep it simple. They have a quick view of what's going up and what's going down with the indicators that we have on each chart. They have a quick count of how long requisitions have been open, how many requisitions have been closed, and they have a quick comparison to what it looked like last year.
So we chose the kind of the top metrics to show on a summary. So this is not all metrics in the summary view. It's what is probably the most valuable to get at least on a one-pager if they only wanted one page.
Right. And so you can see that we have 9 on this page, and we always do a comparison fiscal year to date to fiscal year to date. So it's as of March 2013 and as of March 2014. So then if you'll go to headcount and resources. So this is where we get a little more granular. We have staffing changes, and just click on central services. So we have staffing changes, which will show you where we started, and it's missing off of here, but it'll actually also show you where our headcount ended, and then any of the changes that happened in between. Our total resources includes our open rec, so if we were to fill every single open rec, what would our headcount look like? And then we have our requisition data at the bottom, so you can get a snapshot of how many recs were pending, open, and approved, and it's again how long they've been open, and then how many recs have been closed. So again, not best practice. You can see we have a lot on every single page, and you can just click through the rest. We'll just do a quick look at them. Just skip performance and demographics. And then after this one, we'll go to the appendix.
Okay.
So talent mobility is another group. This is where we have our internal mobility data. We have, we're still trying to figure out quality of hire. So this is where we have our less than 12-month attrition. So those associates who've been here for less than 12 months, how many have left us? It's also where we can break down what kind of internal movement is happening. Are they just progression promotions? Do we have lateral transfers, things like that? How many people are going into internships? And then our last one is our appendix, and it's just text boxes. But this was something that helped us eliminate the questions from our end users. So we have explanations of why we pick certain dates. We have explanations of the metrics and how they're calculated. We have explanations of the differences between the headcount and who would fall into associate headcount, who falls into contractor headcount, who falls into our temp headcount, and then the definitions of our associate levels, just so people understand kind of how things are being broken out.
And the reason why we created an appendix tab is, we mentioned before, we do use tooltips to show the formulas of the different metrics, but we have a large part of our organization that just likes to print everything out. So in order for them to see the dashboard and be able to actually understand how their definitions are, we made this appendix page as well. Anything else?
I guess, can you go back to headcount and try attrition, see if that one will work. I just want to show a tooltip. So if you can hover over reasons for leaving.
No, not that one. Nope, not that one.
No, the reasons for leaving is good.
Okay.
So you can see that we have not only the percent as a whole, we also give them the count. That one doesn't have the definition in it, though.
I know, demo fail.
We usually
imagine
have a
there's a-
definition in it that would include something along the lines of how we're calculating the metric. So I don't know, I guess.
One of the others did have in there, so I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe headcount and resources?
Okay. I mean, they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any questions for us? Yes?
Did you have to go through IT to embed this SharePoint?
No. We did it on our own.
So,
Sorry.
so with the SharePoint, what IT did is they gave us the shell. Here's your SharePoint. Do whatever you want with it. So that's why we were able to be creative, and that's how we decided, hey, they have this cool page viewer web part. Let's integrate the Tableau server view into our SharePoint using page viewer. So we had that flexibility to do that on our own, which was really nice.
So the page viewer just points at the Tableau server.
Exactly.
Any other? The filter, so the question was, where was the filter page built? The filter page is actually built in Tableau, and it uses parameters.
And we'll be happy to show that more in detail after. We could definitely show you how it's a basic calculation to create our parameters.
Yes.
I think you mentioned that your developers built in an input page, like for the presentation, for them to directly input into SAP.
Yes.
Is that in SAP BW, or is that in like your other systems? You know, for like time, for instance, like did they build that in time thing?
So the question is, where is our custom table built for our dashboard automation? The custom table is built in BW. We've actually pulled our time data into BW, so it pulls everything directly from BW. Yes.
So I have two questions. So the custom table is built in BW, so you need IT support for that?
Yes, we did have IT support for the custom table. They did build that for us.
Okay, and then the second question is performance-wise. I know that when you hit the Bex query, it's like you lose a lot of the Tableau performance, right? Is that the case? Is that the case for you guys? Like, are you guys seeing some delay?
The question is about performance with Tableau directly connecting to BW. Yes, there is an issue with performance. We're currently working through it, but it's taking about a minute and a half for our stuff to come up. So it's not horrible. It's just not.
What kind of, like, what's your data quantity? How many records are you guys pulling?
I don't know how many records are coming through, but we do have 10 queries that are connecting, and they don't connect simultaneously. It's all cascaded down.
Oh, so you're pulling data from 10 different queries?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's only taking a minute?
Yeah. So it's not bad. We've done a lot. We have really great IT support in the area of BW, so they've been able to help us a lot with the performance piece. So here's our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And also take the survey. So if you just go to the schedule part of your page and then go to feedback and take the 3-question survey and hit submit, it would help us to make sure that this was useful, and I'm sure it'll help Tableau too. Can you go back so they can get the contact?
Yeah. And I think we have the room for another 10 minutes, so please feel free to come to us and we'll gladly answer any more questions. When we get kicked out, we'll stay here to answer as many questions as you want. So thank you very much for listening to our presentation today.
Thank you.